Good day. I'm Michael Bender from the Center for Fiscal Equity. This is the videotape of our comments for the record to House budget on examining the powerful impact of investments in early childhood for children, families, and our nation's economy. That's from July 20th. It's also part two of the affordable housing hearings for Senate Finance for July 20th, and for Ways and Means affordable housing for July 13th. And this part, the first part, only is for the Budget Committee. As usual, the committee work product is outstanding. Still, it misses the need to remediate parental education deficits, including for immigrants, the need to pay parents to do so, and the need for higher minimum wage, including for participating in training, to strengthen the most vital system supporting children, and that would be parents. The child tax credit, which should be restored to at least American Recovery Plan Act levels, is to be favored because there is no implicit bias against two-parent families in that program and against enlarging lower-income families as well. When dealing with federal income support in general, the desire for economic justice and environmentalism sometimes conflicts. Anti-poverty programs are notorious for not funding those with the father in the home. This is a result of both racism and the desire to limit the number of clients. In short, the zero population growth mentality has made it into housing and income support policy. There should be no conflict here. The ZPG racist and cost control arguments are simply unworthy of American society while being endemic within it. All people of good conscience should resist such nonsense, and I will do so with my last dying breath. Fixed income inequality with higher minimum wages and child tax credits in the free market will respond to the needs of families. Two-parent families with more than two kids should be able to demand three-bedroom apartments, all things being equal. And the bias against two-parent families in current programming and creativity will take care of the rest. Income security. It is time to end the two-tier economy. No one should have to work in what Michael Harrington called the other America. With the end of welfare as we knew it, circumstances have actually gotten worse since Harrington's seminal work. The rise of delivery services, which require drivers to earn tips, and the gig economy, which prevents easy tipping, has made things even worse in the name of progress. We are working harder for less. The committee can start the ball rolling to fix this. Or committees. Minimum wage. The best option for food security and low-income housing is to increase incomes by increasing the minimum wage and the child tax credit and indexing them to inflation. Increasing the minimum wage to $10 should take effect immediately, phasing to $12. You can argue about a $15 or $18 minimum wage after the midterm elections. However, higher minimum wages increase job growth as lower-income employees spend every dime of the increase, as do higher wage workers below the middle management level whose wages also rise. Provisions should also be included to build in law to hold franchisees harmless if minimum wage increases impact their own livelihoods. The conditions of franchise employment and agreements deserve attention, as well as the terms of agreed to standards, payment of franchise owners in low-wage industries, and the ability of workers to organize. If some firms decide to turn franchise employment into full-time employment, so much the better. It is indeed a poor job where the physical productivity of workers in comparison with other factors is under this level, especially when child tax credits are excluded from the equation. The intermediate goal should be either a $12 minimum wage so that it is comparable to the buying power experienced in 1965, or an $11 wage with a 32-hour work week, which would put more people to work. The perception that doing the right thing makes a business non-competitive is the reason we enact minimum wage laws and shouldn't require mandatory leave. Because the labor market is almost always well above wages paid, few jobs are lost when this occurs. Higher wages simply reduce what is called the labor surplus, and not only by Marx, any CFO who cannot calculate the current productive surplus will soon be seeking a job with or without adequate wages and sick leave. Usually they'll get the adequate wages because, well, they're white and have college degrees. So yes, there are two Americas. The requirement that this be provided ends the calculation of whether doing so makes a firm non-competitive, because all competitors must provide the same benefit. This applies to businesses of all sizes. If a firm is so precarious that it cannot survive the change, it probably is not viable without it. In other words, you're going to go broke anyway if you can't afford a little sick leave. Child care and paid leave. Child care is best provided by the employer or the employee-owned or cooperative firm. On-site care with separate spaces for well and sick children, as well as an on-site medical suite for all sick employees, will uncomplicate the morning and evening routines. It'll also make sure that people who are hungover, have to see the doctor at the place. Maybe that'll help them a little to, not be hungover on Monday morning. Making yet another stop in an already busy schedule adds to the stress of the day. Knowing that if problems arise at the workplace, they can be right there will help parents focus on work. Larger firms and government agencies can more easily provide such facilities. Indeed, in the Reeves Center of the district government, such a site already exists. Smaller firms can make arrangements with the landlord of the building where offices or stores are located, including retail districts and shopping malls. For security reasons, these would only serve local workers, but not retail customers, which could, have their own separate paid daycare for shoppers. I've seen it done. It's a wonderful thing. A tax on employers would help society share the pain for requiring paid leave. Firms that offer leave would receive a credit on their taxes, especially low-wage firms. Tax rates should be set high enough to do that. Now, child tax credits. The child tax credit should support the income of each dependent child at medium wage levels and be fully refundable. If a parent participates in education and training, their child tax credit should be paid with the training stipend set to the minimum wage. Including these benefits with pay reduces the need for a $15 minimum wage. $12, which is in line with historical averages prior to 1965, should be adequate. There are two avenues to distribute money to families. The first is to add CTC benefits to unemployment, retirement, educational, TANF and college, and disability benefits. The CTC should be high enough to replace survivors' benefits for children. In other words, if you give, and child support as well. If there's enough of a stipend, then there'll be nothing to argue about. The second way is to distribute the CTC with pay through employers. This can be done with long-term tax reform, but in the interim can be accomplished by having employers start increasing wages immediately to distribute the credit to workers and their families, allowing them to subtract these payments from their quarterly corporate or income tax bills. In other words, you just distribute the money, with pay, and then instead of sending the money to the IRS, you put it on the form. Now, for tax reform will help both low-wage and gig 1099 and staffing services workers who are essentially full-time but are not treated as such. Because these vendors would have to pay the tax and receive the tax breaks, client firms would have the incentive to hire them instead, because they would then get the breaks. Our tax reform plan, which was last adjusted on June 10th of this year, features a subtraction value-added tax. This can serve as an employer-based vehicle for distributing child tax credit, health care, and child care benefits, as I've implied. The SVAT could be levied at both state and federal levels with a common base and tax benefits differing between the states based on their cost of living, which would be paid at the state levy. So if you live in Virginia, you'd pay more because it's than in West Virginia, because it's more expensive to live in Virginia than West Virginia, et cetera, et cetera. Some states are high, some states are low. The federal tax would be the floor of support so that no state could keep any part of its population poor, including migrants, by the way. It's time to end the race to the bottom and its associated war on the poor. Because CTC and earned income tax credits, between the CTC and the earned income tax credit, the CTC is to be preferred. Applying for an EITC earned income tax credit is part of why it is expensive to be poor. For most, outside help is needed to calculate it. Having to get such help is a poor tax. Our proposed changes to individual payroll taxes propose a way to end this credit while assuring adequate retirement savings and family income. We've got a couple paragraphs, which I will put the links to these presentations in the description because they are long and they can stand alone. Now to scroll to that, ProLife scoring. The preceding paragraphs, the following paragraph should be familiar to members and staff as well as the preceding ones. Now that Roe versus Wade has been overturned, they should be made available to everyone, meaning what I'm about to say, pass it on. These reforms must be scored as pro-life legislation and be funded more broadly than the president has promised. Having served on the staff of a major abortion rights organization in the past, I can assure you that no such organization would ever oppose higher living standards for women and their families. The chief obstacle for funding families is not the feminist movement. It is the so-called Right to Life movement who would rather women be penalized for having abortions and subsidized so that abortions are not necessary. Over the course of many decades, I have had conversations with conservative members of the pro-life community. When push comes to shove, they oppose the measures above because their objections to abortion are more about sexuality than the welfare of the children. In the pro-choice movement, many jumped to defend the women's bodies argument before first addressing the need for adequate family income. Doing so now will shame the leadership of the pro-life movement into supporting these provisions to build back better. Now that they've gotten Roe repealed, they need to start paying for the kids, or be called out as the sexist as some of them are. Many of the pro-life movement already do so. Catholic Charities USA Network and the Catholic Health Association all stand with working and poor women. They must be publicly leveraged to get the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops behind them as well, and to have the bishops insist that these measures be considered must-pass legislation for the computation of pro-life voting records. Catholic members of Congress and the President should also lead on this effort. It is time to stop grandstanding on this issue. These measures must pass, and on a larger scale than provided for in Build Back Better. It just makes common sense, and we need to do it yesterday, but we certainly need to do it from now on. Thank you again. If you were watching any of the 3 hearings so referenced, if you're watching this, you know what to do. Subscribe, comment, chat, share it with your members, share it with your staffs, share it with your members. It's the whole thing. If you're, argue amongst yourselves. Call me some kind of communist if you wish, which is technically true. Everybody according to me, that is Marx. It's also Pope Pius XI, who you never hear about, but that got me into this whole living wage thing in the first place. So blame him for the firestorm that is the Center for Fiscal Equity. Again, thank you, and have a pleasant day.